During our anniversary dinner, my husband stood beside his mistress, smirking as he passed me divorce papers. "At last! I'm through with you, sweetheart," he mocked. "I'm trading up now. Go find someone from your own low tier." Laughter broke out around the table. I smiled, thanked them all, and what I did next made their laughter die Midair. You know, there are moments in life that just shatter everything you thought you knew. For me, it was standing there, in the middle of our 5th wedding anniversary celebration, a party he threw, and hearing my husband, Harrison, tell me to my face, in front of 40 people, "I'm upgrading now. Go find someone from your own low level." Can you even imagine that? Just laid bare, disposable, replaced. He was standing there, smug as ever, with a woman I'd never seen before, holding up divorce papers like they were a menu, announcing to everyone that I was officially being traded in. And what happened next? The room erupted in laughter. Not just a few snickers, full-blown, uncomfortable laughter from his colleagues, his business partners, even strangers who were just there for the spectacle of my public humiliation. I just sat there, in my emerald dress, hands folded in my lap, looking at the man I had poured 5 years of my life into. 5 years of building him up, supporting him, sacrificing everything. Harrison, in his twisted mind, thought this was his grand triumph, his big moment of freedom from the wife he'd outgrown, publicly claiming his shiny new future with someone younger and prettier, standing there like a trophy he just won. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was ready. I had been waiting. Not for these exact words, not for the specific, theatrical cruelty, but for the performance itself. Because 3 months earlier, I'd found out the truth. Every single, ugly detail of what Harrison had been doing behind my back. And in the 90 days since, I hadn't just been waiting, I'd been building something. Something that would transform this moment, his supposed victory, from my destruction into his. My phone, tucked discreetly in my clutch, wasn't just a phone. It was connected to every screen in this room. That attorney, mingling with the guests. Not my yoga friend. The mountain of evidence I'd meticulously compiled was about to play for everyone. And that laughter, oh, it was about to die. In a way none of them would ever forget. But to really understand how I got to that moment, you need to know how our story, how our marriage even started. 7 years ago, I met Harrison Whitmore at a marketing conference. He was on stage, presenting on commercial property development, looking so successful and confident in his navy suit. He talked about building a real estate empire like it was an undeniable fact, not just an ambition. He made the future sound like something he could just construct with his bare hands. And I found that vision utterly intoxicating. We had coffee, then dinner. By the end of that weekend, we were hooked. Even living in different cities, we made it work for 6 months, until he moved to my city for a property deal. He said it was for work, but I truly believed I was a part of that decision. When he proposed 2 years later at this fancy downtown restaurant, I didn't hesitate. Not for a second. I truly believed we were building something together. A partnership, mutual support, a life reflecting both our dreams and our contributions. And I threw myself into that partnership with everything I had. Harrison was launching his commercial real estate firm, and I became more than his wife. I became his foundation. I connected him with contacts from my own marketing firm, people who trusted my judgment enough to take meetings based purely on my recommendation. Those introductions led to his first huge property deal, the one that cemented his reputation in an industry where reputation is everything. I took care of everything else, all the invisible labor. Our household ran like clockwork, so Harrison could focus solely on his business. Grocery shopping, meal planning, bills, mortgage payments, coordinating repairs, managing our social calendar, it all fell to me. I even hosted dinners for his business associates, turning our suburban home into a sophisticated space where deals were whispered over good wine and gourmet meals. I learned to read the room, knowing exactly when to join a conversation and when to quietly fade into the background. My sole purpose was to make Harrison look good, to make him look like a man worth doing business with. I supported every late night at the office, every risky investment, every decision that demanded one of us sacrifice for the other's advancement. I told myself, this is partnership. This is building our future. Even if his name was on the business cards and the property deals, our home was my project. I curated every detail, every piece of art, every piece of furniture to project success, stability. To say, Harrison Whitmore is someone with his life together. Someone you can trust with major investments. Looking back from that moment at Meridian Hall, with those divorce papers on the table, it was so clear. I had completely deluded myself. I was so focused on being supportive, on being the perfect wife who enabled her husband's ambitions, that I never once questioned if Harrison actually valued what I was building. Did he see my contributions as a partnership or just the expected price of being married to someone with bigger ambitions than mine? The shift in Harrison's behavior started about 18 months before our 5th anniversary. So gradually, so subtly, that I convinced myself I was imagining things. He started staying later at work, arriving home well after midnight with vague explanations about investor meetings or property tours. When I tried to ask about his day, hoping to connect, his answers became shorter, less detailed. Like he was editing information, not sharing his life. And his phone habits, they changed drastically. That device that used to sit carelessly on the counter while he showered was suddenly glued to his hand. Always face down. Always locked with a password I didn't know and never asked for. When notifications popped up during dinner, he'd glance at it, a little smile playing on his lips, as if those messages were far more interesting than our conversation. Our conversations became purely logistical. Who would pick up groceries? When was the mortgage due? Did we need a plumber for the leaky faucet? The emotional intimacy that had defined our early years. It vanished, replaced by a polite distance you might keep with a roommate whose company you tolerated but didn't particularly enjoy. Physical intimacy followed the same tragic decline. What was once frequent became occasional, then rare, then non-existent. When I tried to initiate anything, Harrison would blame exhaustion, work stress, the demands of a big deal. He suggested we were just going through a difficult phase that would get better once his projects wrapped up. And I believed him, because believing him was easier than confronting what it all might actually mean. I told myself that successful marriages had rough patches, that ambitious men sometimes got consumed by work, that my role as a supportive partner meant giving him space. I made excuses. Constantly. I made excuses to myself. I made excuses to my sister, Emma, who started asking uncomfortable questions about why we never seemed happy together at family gatherings. I made excuses to our friends who noticed we no longer acted like a couple at social events. I was so desperate to believe our marriage was sound that I ignored every single red flag. Every late night that smelled faintly of unfamiliar perfume. Every weekend work emergency that took him away for entire days. Every unexplained charge on our credit cards that I saw, but quickly convinced myself had a perfectly reasonable explanation. Then, 3 weeks before the party, the anniversary invitation arrived. An email. Not a text from Harrison. Not a conversation over breakfast about planning something special. An invite, with a professional design and calligraphy, announcing a celebration at Meridian Hall, one of the most expensive venues in the city. I stood in our bedroom, staring at my phone screen, and a cold dread settled deep in my stomach. Harrison hadn't voluntarily planned anything for us in 3 years. Our last anniversary was Chinese takeout and a greeting card I bought and signed his name to because I couldn't bear to mark 5 years of marriage with absolutely nothing. Yet here was an invitation to an elaborate party I knew nothing about. 40 guests I hadn't helped choose. A venue I hadn't been consulted on. An entire evening orchestrated without a single word to me, the person supposedly being honored. I scrolled through the guest list, my unease growing. It was packed with Harrison's business partners and colleagues. My sister Emma was there, which was a small comfort, and a handful of mutual friends who I suspected would feel just as uncomfortable as I expected to feel, watching whatever performance Harrison had planned. The realization hit me with absolute clarity. This wasn't about celebrating our marriage. This was about something else entirely. Something that required an audience, and formal planning, and a venue expensive enough to impress the exact people Harrison wanted to witness whatever he was about to do. That afternoon, during my lunch break, I called Emma from my car. She answered immediately, and I could hear the concern in her voice before I even finished explaining. "Gemma," she said, her voice careful, When a man who hasn't planned anything in 3 years suddenly throws an expensive anniversary party without consulting his wife, that's not romance. That's something else. You need to be ready for whatever he's planning to do in front of all those people. Her words articulated the fear I had been desperately trying to suppress. I wanted to defend Harrison, to insist she was wrong, to cling to the illusion that my marriage was just going through a rough patch. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I couldn't make myself believe the excuses. 3 weeks later, I would be sitting at Meridian Hall, in that emerald dress, watching my husband announce our divorce to 40 witnesses, standing beside his mistress. But in that moment, sitting in my car with Emma's warning echoing, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to be ready. That decision, to be ready, not reactive, carried me through the rest of the week. I moved through our house like a ghost, touching furniture I'd picked out, looking at photos of a marriage that now felt like a fiction. Harrison came and went with his usual detachment, barely acknowledging my presence beyond logistical exchanges. Saturday morning, 3 weeks before the party, Harrison left at 6 a.m. for his routine at the downtown gym. The fancy club he joined 8 months earlier, claiming he needed to network with high-net-worth clients. I heard the front door close, his car pulling out, while I was still in bed, pretending to sleep. Our mornings had become an exercise in avoidance. 30 minutes later, I went downstairs to make coffee. My usual weekend ritual, grinding fresh beans, using the French press he'd given me for my birthday years ago, back when he still paid attention to what I liked. The kitchen was quiet, just the sound of water heating, beans grinding. Familiar domestic sounds, but now they felt strange, hollow. The foundation beneath them had cracked. Then I saw it. His laptop, open on the counter. Harrison never left his laptop open. Everything had been password protected, private, treated like classified documents for the past 18 months. Yet there it sat, screen glowing faintly in the morning light. I was pouring hot water over the coffee grounds when the notification appeared. A small pop-up in the corner of the screen, clear as day from where I stood. My hand froze on the French press. I read the words, and time just stopped. Asterisk weekend away with L, Napa Valley Resort. Confirm reservation. Asterisk the dates were for next month, Thursday through Sunday. 4 days at the romantic Vineyard Resort I'd been suggesting we visit for 2 years. The place I'd bookmarked, mentioned repeatedly, trying to find something, anything, that might rekindle what we'd lost. But this wasn't with me. This was with someone who warranted a single initial. L, suggesting either careful discretion or the kind of casual intimacy where full names become unnecessary. I put down the French press, slowly, deliberately, my coffee forgotten. I walked the 3 steps to his laptop. The shower upstairs was still running. Harrison would be occupied for at least 10, maybe 15 minutes. My first thought, close it, respect his privacy, walk away, convince myself there was an innocent explanation. But my hands were already moving, clicking. The calendar application opened fully, the screen filled with entries I'd never seen. Weeks, months of scheduled appointments that told a story I had been refusing to acknowledge, even as I lived inside it. Lunch with Al appeared every Tuesday and Thursday at noon. Always during hours Harrison claimed to be meeting investors or touring properties far too out of the way for me to casually visit. The entries stretched back weeks, a pattern so consistent it was clearly routine, not occasional. Evening at Al's place populated most Thursday nights. The same evenings Harrison told me he was at networking events, coming home after midnight smelling of wine and cigarettes, explaining he needed to make the right connections. I scrolled further back, watching months of my marriage rewrite themselves as I discover the truth beneath every explanation I had so readily accepted. The Napa Resort reservation wasn't an isolated romantic gesture. It was part of a pattern stretching back 14 months. 14 months of systematic deception while I was maintaining our home, planning our anniversary, and wondering why I felt so desperately alone. The earlier entries were even more explicit, created before Harrison had apparently learned to use initials for discretion. Dinner with Leah at Harborview. Meet Leah at the Grandmont Hotel. Pick up gift for Leah. Leah, not an initial, an actual name. A real person who had occupied 14 months of my husband's life while I was being the supportive wife, making sure his shirts were pressed and his mother received birthday cards on time. The shower upstairs turned off. I had maybe 5 minutes before Harrison came downstairs, expecting breakfast, and the same oblivious wife he'd been deceiving for over a year. I opened his email. My hands moved faster now, adrenaline overriding the shock. His inbox loaded immediately. He hadn't even bothered to log out, confident in his privacy, or perhaps just careless in his comfort with deception. The emails from Leah were easy to find. They dominated his recent messages. Dozens of them, just in the past week. I clicked on the most recent thread and started reading. The messages were worse than the calendar entries. They contained actual words, emotions, expressed in complete sentences. A relationship that existed in detailed exchanges, not just scheduled appointments. Leah Vaughn was 28, according to her email signature. A marketing director at Grandview Hotels, a luxury chain Harrison's company had partnered with. Her professional title sat beneath her name in clean font, creating this bizarre dissonance between her corporate role and the intimate content of her messages to my husband. Cannot wait for Napa, baby. Finally, a whole weekend without hiding. I'm so tired of pretending we're just colleagues when we're together at work events. I want to be able to touch you without worrying who's watching. Harrison's response came within minutes. I know, sunshine. Just a few more weeks after the anniversary thing is handled. Everything changes. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just as building the life we've been planning. The anniversary thing. He was referring to our marriage. Our 5 years together. As a thing to be handled before moving on to his real life with someone else. I scrolled through more messages, each one revealing layers of a relationship that had clearly moved far beyond a physical affair into a full-blown emotional partnership. They had inside jokes, shared references to experiences I knew nothing about, plans for a future that included Harrison, but somehow excluded his wife entirely. He called her sunshine, the best part of his day, his reason for getting up in the morning. Phrases I dimly remembered him using with me during our courtship before they became casualties of familiarity and the comfortable routine of our established marriage. But the truly devastating discovery? It wasn't emotional. It was financial. Buried in their email exchanges was a shared folder Harrison had given Leah access to. Labeled, Our Future, with the kind of optimistic certainty that made my stomach churn. I clicked it. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet loaded. Assets Harrison was moving. Bank statements showing systematic transfers from our joint accounts into new ones bearing only his name. Investment accounts I had helped fund through my salary and the business contacts I had provided. Now being liquidated, converted into holdings I had no access to, no knowledge of, until this very moment. He had been stealing from me, methodically, deliberately, for months. I found statements for accounts I didn't even know existed. Transfers of substantial amounts that should have required both our signatures, but apparently hadn't. Documentation showing he'd been using our home equity as collateral for business loans without my knowledge or consent, putting our house at risk for investments that would benefit only him if the marriage ended. There was even a draft post-nuptial agreement tucked away in a subfolder. I opened it. The terms were so one-sided they would have been comical if they hadn't represented the systematic theft of everything I had helped build over 5 years. Harrison would keep the business, the investment accounts, the retirement funds, most of the property we'd accumulated. I would receive a small settlement that might cover 6 months of basic living expenses if I was extremely careful. He wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to leave me with nothing. While he started a new life with someone younger, more exciting, someone worthy of the successful version of himself he wanted to present to the world. I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps. Towards the stairs. Harrison would be down in less than 2 minutes, expecting his Saturday morning routine to proceed exactly as it always did. My first instinct? Confrontation. To scream. To throw his laptop across the kitchen. To demand explanations, apologies, some acknowledgement of what he'd done. But something stopped me. Some primal survival instinct. It recognized that anger without strategy was just noise. That confrontation without preparation would give Harrison time to hide more assets, delete more evidence, construct more lies that I would have no way to disprove. I pulled out my phone instead, started photographing everything on his screen. My hands were steadier than they had any right to be. Every calendar entry, every email exchange, every financial document showing the systematic transfer of our shared assets into accounts bearing only his name. My hands moved with mechanical efficiency, while my mind processed the complete destruction of everything I had believed about my marriage. I created a secure cloud storage account under a pseudonym, using my work email and a password Harrison would never guess. Uploaded every single photo while listening to him move around upstairs. Then, I closed his laptop exactly as I'd found it, notifications still visible, and returned to making coffee as if the past 10 minutes hadn't just dismantled my entire life. Harrison came downstairs 5 minutes later, hair damp, gym clothes bundled in his arms. He was humming, looking relaxed, satisfied, a way I hadn't seen in months. "Good workout?" I asked, my voice remarkably normal, given what I'd just discovered. "Great," he said, leaning in to kiss my forehead with the same casual affection you might show a moderately appreciated household pet. "Sorry, I'm running late, though. Can you wrap those eggs to go?" I wrapped his breakfast in foil, handed him a travel mug of coffee I'd poured while he collected his things. Watched him grab his laptop, oblivious. Waved as he headed out for another Saturday at the office that probably involved Leia more than actual work. The door closed. His car started. I stood alone in our kitchen, with cold coffee and the crushing weight of knowledge I could never unknow. Then I sat down at our kitchen table, opened my laptop, and began researching divorce attorneys who specialized in financial fraud within marriages. The search for a lawyer specializing in financial fraud was a dizzying rabbit hole of legal websites and consultation forms. I needed someone who understood this wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about recovering systematically stolen assets and preventing Harrison from controlling the narrative. Catherine Ross's name kept popping up in reviews and forums about complex divorce cases. Her website was professional, featuring testimonials that read like victory reports from women in situations similar to mine. One in particular caught my eye. Catherine recovered money my ex-husband swore no longer existed and made him pay for trying to hide it. That was my person. Monday morning, I called her office from my car, parked 3 blocks from my workplace. I couldn't risk anyone overhearing. The receptionist had that efficient professionalism that suggested she handled calls from desperate women every day. "I need a consultation about divorce involving financial fraud," I said, keeping my voice steady. "How soon can you come in?" she asked, without hesitation. "As soon as possible. Tomorrow afternoon at 2. Bring any documentation you have. Bank statements, emails, photographs, anything that supports what you're telling me." Tuesday afternoon, I walked into a steel and glass building downtown, screaming expensive legal expertise. Catherine's office was on the 14th floor. Stepping into her calm, neutral reception area, I felt both completely out of place and exactly where I needed to be. Catherine Ross, mid-40s, impeccably dressed, had a firm handshake and an intimidatingly organized office. She gestured me into her conference room, where a notepad and recording device were already waiting. "Tell me everything," she said simply. I showed her the screenshots, walked her through the calendar entries and emails, explained the financial documents. 40 minutes later, Catherine had filled several pages with precise notes. "Your husband," she said, looking up, her expression a mix of sympathy and predatory focus, "is both dishonest and sloppy. That combination will be his downfall." She drilled me for another 30 minutes, asking about our finances, the timeline of changes, any other suspicious behavior. Then she leaned back, outlining her plan. Over the next 2 weeks, Catherine assembled a team that worked with military precision. Marcus, a forensic accountant, started tracing Harrison's financial movements, uncovering layers of hidden accounts and discovering he'd been using our home equity as collateral for business loans without my knowledge or signature. A private investigator began documenting Harrison and Leia's movements. Sophie, a paralegal, organized everything into case files that grew thicker with each visit. The team even found out about Harrison's business partner, Joel Preston, and his vintage watch collection. Harrison had claimed he'd sold it 3 years ago when business was tight. It was worth at least $40,000, sitting in climate-controlled storage, while he told me we needed to be careful with spending. Credit card analysis revealed charges for luxury hotels on our joint account. I'd been unknowingly financing his romantic getaways. Marcus documented expensive dinners, jewelry purchases, even spa treatments that clearly weren't for my benefit. The private investigator captured video footage. Harrison and Leah holding hands at lunch, entering hotels in the middle of the afternoon, emerging hours later. 3 weeks into building our case, Catherine called me back for a strategic planning session. She'd noticed something significant about the timing and nature of the anniversary party. "He is planning something public," she said, her voice grave. My stomach tightened. The expensive venue, the guest list heavy with business associates, the formal invitations. "This is not about celebrating your marriage. This is theater." She explained that men like Harrison didn't just want to leave their wives, they wanted to be seen leaving. To be witnessed upgrading. To have their decision validated by people whose opinions mattered to their professional and social standing. "The anniversary party," Catherine continued, "is not a celebration. It's a stage. He is going to do something there, and we need to be ready with a response that is equally public and far more devastating." Her assessment made terrifying sense. It explained why Harrison had suddenly taken the initiative to plan an elaborate event after years of doing nothing. This wasn't about honoring our marriage. This was about positioning himself as the successful man, finally free from the burden of a wife he'd outgrown. Catherine drafted legal documents for immediate filing. She prepared evidence packages: financial fraud, marital asset dissipation, documented infidelity with dates and locations. She coordinated with Marcus and the private investigator to ensure comprehensive documentation. "When he makes his move," Catherine said, "we respond immediately, publicly, and with evidence he cannot dispute. He wants theater. We will give him theater. But our version ends very differently than the script he has written." The hardest part of those 3 weeks, not the meetings, not reviewing the evidence of betrayal. It was going home every evening and pretending I knew nothing. Maintaining the facade of the oblivious wife, living with the man systematically destroying everything we had supposedly built. Every morning, I made coffee and asked about his day with genuine-sounding interest. Every evening, I prepared dinners he barely touched, scrolling on his phone, probably texting Leah about plans that didn't include me. I did laundry, paid bills, maintained our household exactly as always. I attended work functions with him, smiling, making small talk with people who had no idea what was brewing beneath our stable marriage. Sometimes, Leah was there. I watched them maintain a careful professional distance, while their eyes communicated everything their words couldn't. 2 weeks before the party, his firm hosted a charity gala. I wore a navy dress Harrison had once complimented, playing the supportive wife while he worked the room. Leah arrived halfway through, in something stunning red. She kept her distance from Harrison, but I watched her watch him during his speech. During a break, I found myself next to Leah at the bar. She smiled, seemingly genuinely friendly. "You must be so proud of Harrison," she said, gesturing to him. "He's built something really impressive." "We built it together," I replied, my voice pleasant, rage burning quietly inside. "I was there from the beginning. Made a lot of it possible, actually." "Of course," Leah said, though her expression suggested she hadn't considered my role beyond being the wife. "It must be nice being married to someone so ambitious." I looked at this woman who had been sleeping with my husband for 14 months, who had received romantic getaways, funded by my salary. "It has been educational," I said, then excused myself before I said something that would reveal how much I actually knew. The performance required constant vigilance, every word carefully chosen, every facial expression controlled. I complimented his new clothes, not mentioning they appeared despite his claims that business was challenging. I admired his improved physique, not noting it hadn't improved his interest in me. I became the perfect version of the oblivious wife Harrison needed me to be. The woman who suspected nothing, questioned nothing, threatened nothing. All while Catherine and her team built a case that would destroy everything he was planning. The anniversary party was now only 1 week away. Harrison started coming home earlier some evenings, almost jovial, excited, like someone about to execute a flawless plan. He had no idea I was executing a plan of my own. The final week moved with a strange, dual quality, too fast, yet impossibly slow. Each day brought me closer to the confrontation, stretching out every interaction with Harrison into exhausting performance art. Tuesday evening, he came home at 6. So unusual, I actually looked up from dinner prep in genuine surprise. He hadn't been home before 8 on a weeknight in months. "Thought I'd actually have dinner at home tonight," he said, loosening his tie, pouring himself a bourbon. He settled at the table, with the air of someone making a deliberate choice to be present, not someone who actually wanted to be there. I brought over the pasta. We ate in silence. "This is going to be a special night on Sunday," he said, watching me over his glass. "Really special. I invited everyone important. Your sister is coming, right?" "Emma will be there," I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral, that cold weight settling in my stomach again. "Good. That's good." He swirled his bourbon. His hand wasn't quite steady. "Nerves? Excitement? I couldn't tell. I want everyone there. I want them to see where we are, where things are going." The phrasing was vague, carefully ambiguous. I played the supportive wife, assuming the best. "It was thoughtful of you to plan something," I said. The lie tasted bitter, but the words came out smooth. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Guilt, anticipation, maybe a last flicker of doubt. It vanished, replaced by his confident mask. He went to bed early, claiming an important meeting. I stayed up, on the phone with Emma, my lifeline. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. "I feel like I'm holding my breath underwater," I admitted. "Just waiting to surface, but not sure I'll make it." "You're stronger than I would be," Emma said. "I would have confronted him weeks ago. Probably thrown his laptop through a window." I laughed, despite everything. "Catherine says the key is patience. Let him think he has control, so we can take it away completely when it matters most." "Catherine is brilliant and terrifying," Emma replied. "Remind me never to get on her bad side." We talked for another hour, going over Sunday's details. Emma knew her role: record everything, provide support, and do not react visibly. Any dramatic response from me would give him ammunition to claim I was unstable. Thursday afternoon, Catherine called an emergency meeting. Her voice carried an urgency that made my pulse quicken. "Marcus found something significant," she said. "Can you be at my office in an hour?" I left work early, claiming a dental emergency, and drove downtown, hence gripping the wheel. Catherine's conference room felt smaller. Marcus was there, with Catherine's associate specializing in tax law. Documents were spread across the table. Harrison's business partner has been keeping documentation of questionable financial practices, Marcus explained. "Joel Preston. He's been uncomfortable for months with how Harrison handles property valuations and loan applications." Catherine picked up the explanation. "Harrison has been inflating property appraisals to secure larger loans than the properties are actually worth. He takes out the loan based on the false valuation, uses some of it for legitimate business, and pockets the difference. It's systematic fraud that extends beyond your marriage into his professional operations." The tax attorney, Rebecca Chin, added, "Based on what Joel has documented and what Marcus has uncovered, Harrison has also been underreporting income from property sales. The difference between what he reports to the IRS and what he actually receives is significant enough to trigger a federal investigation." I sat down slowly, processing the scope. So, this isn't just about divorce anymore. This is about documenting a pattern of fraudulent behavior that extends into multiple areas of his life. Catherine confirmed, "When you expose what he has done to you personally, we will also be exposing practices that could result in criminal charges." Joel was willing to testify, with legal protection. "Can you arrange that?" I asked. "Already in process," Catherine replied. Rebecca had IRS contacts who'd be very interested. They drafted a formal complaint to trigger an investigation. "Why wait?" I asked. "Because timing matters," Catherine explained. "If we file before the party, Harrison might get wind of it and change his plans. We need him to proceed with whatever he has orchestrated for Sunday evening. We need him confident and exposed. Then we hit him with everything at once: the personal betrayal, the financial fraud within your marriage, and the professional misconduct that threatens his entire business. The scope of what we were building felt overwhelming. An affair and asset concealment had spiraled into potential federal crimes, threatening to destroy everything Harrison had built. "You need to leave no room for doubt," Catherine said, reading my expression. "No space for him to claim you're a vindictive ex-wife, exaggerating the truth. When you reveal what he has done, it needs to be so thoroughly documented that nobody, not his colleagues, not his business partners, not even his lawyers, can question the evidence." Friday afternoon, I picked up the emerald dress I'd ordered 2 weeks earlier. Emma came with me for moral support. As we headed to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Harrison: "We're something nice tomorrow. I want you to look good for our guests." I showed it to Emma, who actually threw her phone across my car in frustration. "He is unbelievable. He's going to publicly divorce you, and he wants you to dress up for it." "That's exactly what I need," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "His arrogance is what makes this work. He's so confident I will comply with his expectations, even as he destroys our marriage, that he cannot imagine I might have plans of my own." Emma retrieved her phone. "You're terrifying when you're strategic. Remind me never to cross you." That evening, Harrison worked late again. I sat alone in our living room with a glass of wine, going through the evidence one last time. Photos of Harrison and Leah, video footage, financial documents, email exchanges. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message was short, devastating in its casual confidence. "Tomorrow is going to be perfect. Finally, I can stop hiding." The text was clearly meant for Harrison. Leah had somehow confused my number with his. An easy mistake, probably, if our names were sequential in his contacts. She was excited. About tomorrow. About whatever public declaration Harrison had planned. About finally stepping into the role she'd been playing in secret for over a year. I forwarded the screenshot to Catherine without comment. Her response came minutes later. "Perfect. Keep that. We can use it." Saturday evening arrived with the quality of a Last Supper. Harrison came home early, poured bourbons for both of us without being asked, and actually sat with me in the living room. "I've been thinking about us," he said after several minutes of silence. I waited, letting him fill the quiet with whatever carefully constructed statement he prepared. "Tomorrow is going to mark a new chapter. Things have been difficult, I know, but change can be good. Change can be exactly what people need to move forward." His words were deliberately vague, designed to mean anything. I played along. "Change can be good," I agreed. "Tomorrow will certainly be memorable." We sat there for another hour, having the most extended conversation we'd shared in months. Every word he spoke was theater. Every response I gave was performance. Two people speaking different languages, pretending perfect understanding. Harrison went to bed, claiming he needed to be rested. I sat alone, finishing my bourbon, thinking about how tomorrow night would be the last time he slept in this house as my husband. Possibly the last time he would be a free man before everything he had built came crashing down with the weight of documented truth. I felt surprisingly calm, almost peaceful, like someone who had been climbing a mountain for 3 months and could finally see the summit. Tomorrow I would reach it. Sunday arrived with the weight of inevitability. I woke before dawn, listening to Harrison sleep beside me, his breathing steady, undisturbed by any conscience. The irony wasn't lost on me. This would be the last morning we'd wake up in the same house as husband and wife. I spent the day in careful preparation. The emerald silk dress hung in my closet pressed. My hair appointment was at 3, giving me time to achieve that polished look without appearing to have tried too hard. Every detail mattered. Every element of my appearance needed to communicate respect, not that I was someone to be casually discarded. Harrison spent most of the day at his office, claiming last-minute preparations, though I suspected he was with Leah. He came home at 4 to shower and change, passing me in the hallway with barely a word, confirming he'd meet me at the venue. He needed to arrive early. I was grateful for the solitude. It gave me time to center myself, to run through the plan one final time with Catherine over the phone, to mentally prepare. At 6:30, I stood outside Meridian Hall alone. Emma had offered to come with me, but I declined. I needed this moment to myself, to walk through those doors on my own terms, carrying the weight of what I knew and what I was about to do. The building was stunning, glass and steel rising above the harbor, reflecting sunset colors. Harrison had spared no expense, ironically, from accounts that legally belonged to both of us. I checked my phone. Catherine had texted. She was inside, positioned as my yoga friend. Marcus was parked nearby. Everything was in place. Every piece of our counter-strategy, built over 3 months, ready to deploy. I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, checked my reflection. I saw a woman far more composed than she felt. Then, head held high, expression carefully neutral, I walked through the entrance. Every inch the devoted wife, arriving to celebrate, completely unaware her marriage was about to end in front of 40 witnesses. The first thing I saw was Leia, standing beside Harrison near the entrance, greeting guests like this was her party. Her right to play hostess at an event supposedly honoring my marriage. The audacity was breathtaking. She wore red, a dress that probably cost what I earned in 2 months. Her hair was styled and loose, romantic waves, her makeup flawless, camera ready. Perfect for whatever photographic documentation Harrison expected. She looked like success, like youth, like everything I apparently wasn't, in Harrison's estimation. Harrison saw me. His expression flickered, surprise, maybe guilt, or just the discomfort of seeing someone you're about to publicly destroy looking unexpectedly composed and beautiful. "Gemma," he said, my name sounding foreign in his mouth after months of disregard. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, perfectly polite. "The venue is stunning. You did an excellent job with the planning." I turned to Leia, extended my hand with the same gracious courtesy I'd show any hostess. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced. I'm Gemma." She took my hand, a smile that held genuine pity. Pity for the woman she'd been betraying for 14 months. "Leia Vaughn. It's lovely to finally meet you properly." Properly, as if we'd been circling each other for years, not existing in the same spaces while she had an affair with my husband. "Lovely to meet you as well," I said, releasing her hand, moving past them into the event space before either could read anything beyond polite friendliness in my expression. The room filled rapidly. Harrison's business associates dominated. Men and women I recognized. Several mutual friends arrived. People who would soon have to choose sides. My sister Emma was already positioned near the head table, her phone casually resting beside her water glass. Catherine stood near the bar, playing her yoga friend role perfectly. She caught my eye, gave the smallest nod, then returned to her conversation. Everything was in place. Everyone was positioned. Dinner began at 7. We were seated at a long table, center of the room, for maximum visibility. 40 guests, carefully planned seating, separating me from Harrison by the entire table's length. I sat at one end, like a guest at my own anniversary, while Harrison held court at the other, Leia beside him. Her hand touched his arm repeatedly, small, proprietary gestures that made several guests visibly uncomfortable. People noticed. They always notice when something's inappropriate, even if they don't acknowledge it directly. The food was expensive, beautifully presented. 5 courses of tiny portions. I couldn't taste any of it. My focus was solely on Harrison, waiting for his performance, preparing my response. Conversations around me were superficial. I participated, polite and engaged, while my mind ran through every step. Between the 4th and 5th courses, I saw Emma subtly pull out her phone, positioning its screen out. Recording mode activated. Catherine did the same. Both phones, different angles, capturing what was about to unfold. Then Harrison stood. The room went silent, the kind of attention successful men command effortlessly. "Thank you all for celebrating this special evening with us," he began, his voice confident, clearly rehearsed. 5 years ago, I made a commitment. Tonight, I want to acknowledge that commitment and where it has brought me. I watched his face, the satisfaction, the confidence of someone who believed he was finally taking control, freeing himself from a burden. "Marriage teaches you what you really want," he continued, looking directly at me. "What you actually need, what you are willing to settle for versus what you deserve." Several guests shifted. The atmosphere changed. This wasn't a typical anniversary toast. Gemma has been exactly what I expected when we married. Supportive, reliable, present. He made those qualities sound like criticisms, like failures disguised as compliments, as if I had disappointed him by being exactly what a partner should be. But I have grown beyond what I was 5 years ago. My business has expanded, my vision has evolved, and I have found someone who matches where I am now, not where I was then. Leia was looking at him with undisguised adoration. The room was completely silent, except for soft classical music, an utterly inappropriate soundtrack for the destruction unfolding. Harrison reached into his jacket, pulled out a manila envelope. He walked the entire length of the table with theatrical precision and placed it directly in front of me. "Divorce papers," he announced, with a satisfaction that made several guests audibly gasp. "Already filed, already processed. I'm done with you, sweetheart. Finally, completely done. I'm upgrading now. So, go find someone from your own low level." Leia laughed first. A bright, sharp sound that seemed to grant permission for others to join. Some of Harrison's business associates did, nervous laughter filling the space where shock had been. Emma looked ready to physically attack him. Catherine was absolutely still, her expression a laser focus. I looked at the envelope, at Harrison's face, glowing with triumph, at Leia, standing beside him like a prize. Then I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a broken smile. Something genuine. Something that came from a calm certainty I hadn't accessed in months. The laughter in the room faltered. Harrison's expression flickered with confusion. This wasn't his script. I was supposed to cry, to beg, to make a scene that validated his decision, making him look like the reasonable one. I picked up the manila envelope, slowly, deliberately, opened it with hands steadier than they had any right to be. The divorce papers inside were exactly as expected, already processed, everything designed to make this moment irreversible. Public. I read the first page with the careful attention you might give a restaurant menu. Then I looked up at Harrison with an expression I'd been practicing for weeks in front of my bathroom mirror. "Thank you," I said quietly, but in the silence, my voice carried perfectly to every corner. "Truly, thank you for this gift." Harrison's confidence wavered visibly. This wasn't the response he'd anticipated. Guests exchanged confused glances. I stood, smoothed the emerald silk of my dress, and reached into my clutch. My phone emerged. "Since we are sharing important documents tonight," I said, my voice steady, carrying with unexpected authority, "I have something too. A little anniversary surprise of my own." I had arranged access to the venue's audio-visual system that afternoon, claiming I wanted to prepare a sentimental photo montage. The staff had been so helpful. My phone connected on the first attempt. The screens flickered to life. What appeared was not a sentimental photo montage. It was Catherine's carefully edited video compilation, opening with simple text on a black screen. What Harrison did while Gemma planned their anniversary. The soundtrack was dramatic, cold, something classical that made it feel like a documentary. I'd left the music selection to Catherine. She chose perfectly. Then came the photographs. Marcus's surveillance. Harrison and Leia entering hotel rooms in the afternoon. Timestamps clearly visible, corresponding exactly with hours Harrison had claimed he was touring properties. Harrison and Leia having lunch at expensive restaurants, his hand on hers. Body language unmistakably intimate. Harrison and Leia at his exclusive gym, then leaving together, getting into her car, driving to her apartment. Text message screenshots appeared next. Conversations where Leia called him my future, and Harrison promised their life together once he handled the Gemma situation. The footage was damning. Not just proof of infidelity, but of a relationship conducted in public, with an arrogance or confidence that I would never discover the truth. The room was silent, every guest forced to watch. Harrison's face went from triumph to shock to horror. He was watching his private relationship exposed. The irony wasn't lost on me. Leia went pale, one hand pressed to her mouth. She looked sick, but the photographic evidence was only the opening act. The video transitioned smoothly to financial documents. Bank statements showing Harrison's systematic transfer of assets from our joint accounts to his name. Spreadsheets detailing liquidation of investments I had helped fund. Credit card charges for hotels, dinners, jewelry, all charged to our shared accounts. The screens displayed documentation of a storage unit containing his vintage watch collection, which he'd claimed was sold years ago. The hidden accounts. The use of our home equity as collateral without my knowledge. The draft post-nuptial agreement, so one-sided it screamed either legal incompetence or utter contempt for my contributions. Several of Harrison's business associates were leaning forward now, reading the financial documents with the attention of people who understood exactly what they were seeing and the legal implications. Then, the final piece, the evidence Catherine had saved for maximum impact. A letter from the Internal Revenue Service. Official letterhead. Proper seals. Signatures from federal officials Catherine had contacted. The letter outlined an investigation into Harrison's company for tax fraud. Unreported income from property sales. Income he had concealed not just from me, but from federal authorities. The document detailed potential charges, significant fines, possible criminal prosecution. 40 guests sat in absolute silence, watching a successful man's reputation disintegrate, watching private financial crimes become public record, watching what they thought was a simple divorce announcement transform into evidence of systematic betrayal and fraud extending far beyond marital misconduct. When the screens finally went dark, the silence was total, broken only by the sound of someone crying. Leah, her mascara running, ruining her carefully constructed appearance. Her face crumpled as she understood that her career and reputation had just been demolished along with Harrison's. I walked the length of the table slowly, deliberately, holding a second set of papers I'd been carrying in my purse. Harrison stood frozen, unable to speak or move. His face, once triumphant, was now a pale shade of genuine shock. "You wanted to upgrade," I said, looking directly at him. My voice quiet, but carrying in the silence. "But you forgot that intelligence isn't measured by age or appearance. It's measured by strategy." I placed the papers in his hands with the same casual cruelty he had shown me minutes earlier. "These are from Catherine Ross, my attorney," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll recognize some of the language, because it's the same language from those divorce papers you just gave me. Except in my version, you don't get the house you try to transfer into your name using forged documents. You don't get the investment accounts you attempted to hide. You don't get anything beyond exactly 50% of our legitimately shared assets. And you will be returning every cent you stole with interest." Catherine stood from her position. Professional. Terrifying. She commanded attention. "The IRS documents are legitimate," she announced. "I contacted them personally regarding Mr. Whitmore's tax irregularities. They were very interested in the information Mrs. Whitmore provided about unreported income and property valuation fraud." Harrison's mouth opened. No words emerged. He looked like someone drowning, unable to breathe or think. Several business associates were already pulling out their phones, typing rapidly, calculating how quickly they could distance themselves from someone under federal investigation. Professional relationships, built over years, dissolving in real time. I turned to Leah, still crying silently beside Harrison. "Your employer received an interesting package this afternoon," I said, my voice carrying the same quiet authority. Video evidence of an employee engaging in an affair, using company resources to facilitate that relationship. Company hotels for personal use. Company expense accounts for romantic dinners. Company time for personal appointments. I believe they call that misappropriation of corporate assets. Leah made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Her company had strict policies. Her career, like Harrison's reputation, was collapsing. I looked at the 40 guests, many of them now recording the scene on their phones, just as they had recorded what they thought was my humiliation minutes earlier. "Thank you all for witnessing this," I said. "Your presence makes everything documented public. And very permanent." I picked up my clutch, nodded to Emma and Catherine. They stood immediately, joining me. Then, I walked out of Meridian Hall, head high, dignity intact, leaving behind 40 stunned guests, a weeping mistress, and a husband whose life I had just systematically demolished, using nothing more than patience, evidence, and the strategic application of truth. The glass doors of Meridian Hall hissed shut behind us. The evening air felt cool against my face. The adrenaline was draining, and I realized I was shaking slightly. Emma linked her arm through mine. Catherine walked on my other side, already on her phone. We had left Harrison standing there, surrounded by people already calculating their distance. Left him with divorce papers that would strip away everything he tried to steal. Left him with federal investigation documents that transformed personal betrayal into potential criminal prosecution. Through the glass, I could see movement inside. Guests standing, clustering. Some leaving. Others, probably discussing what they just witnessed with fascinated horror, the kind reserved for spectacular disasters they're grateful not to be experiencing. That was the most incredible thing I have ever witnessed, Emma said once we reached her car. Her voice shook slightly. She'd been holding so much tension. Gemma, that was perfect. Everything was absolutely perfect. I leaned against her car and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 3 months. I need to not go home tonight. I can't face that house. You're staying with me, Emma said immediately. For as long as you need. I already made up the guest room before I left for the party. Figured you wouldn't want to go back there tonight. Catherine finished typing. He will try to contact you, she said, matter-of-factly. Probably within the hour. Angry first, demanding to know how you could do this to him. Then pleading, asking you to fix what you just did to his reputation. Do not respond. To anything. Not texts. Not calls. Not emails. All communication goes through me now. I understand, I said. I'm serious about this, Gemma. Any direct communication can be used to suggest you're open to reconciliation or negotiation outside proper legal channels. Let him spiral. Let him panic. Let his attorneys deal with the mess he created while we proceed with documenting and recovering every asset he tried to hide. We drove to Emma's apartment in separate cars. I followed her taillights through streets that felt surreal, like the world had fundamentally changed in 30 minutes. Emma's apartment was smaller than our house, but filled with her furniture, her art. She poured wine while I sat on her couch, trying to process. My phone started buzzing around 9. Texts from unknown numbers. Social media notifications. Emma's phone was doing the same. Gemma, she said slowly, staring at her screen. The video is already online. She turned her phone to me. Someone had uploaded footage from the anniversary dinner to multiple platforms. The view count was climbing. Hundreds, becoming thousands as we watched. How many people were recording? I asked. At least a dozen, Emma replied. Maybe more. Everyone had their phones out once your video started playing. We watched in real time as the anniversary dinner became viral content. Comment sections filled rapidly. People praised my strategic patience, mocked Harrison's arrogance, celebrated the most satisfying public revenge. Someone had already edited a shortened version, focusing on his announcement, then my reveal. Set to dramatic orchestral music, it was spreading even faster. This is insane, Emma said, scrolling. Hundreds of thousands of views already. Maybe over 1 million. By midnight, it was several million. My face was being screenshot, turned into reaction images. Someone created a meme from the moment I thanked Harrison for the divorce papers, captioning it about strategic planning and patience. That meme was shared hundreds of thousands of times. I turned off my phone around 1 a.m. The constant notifications were overwhelming. Emma did the same, confirming Catherine had everything she needed. Try to sleep, Emma said, showing me to her guest room. Tomorrow is going to be intense. I lay awake for hours, replaying the evening, questioning decisions, even though everything had gone exactly to plan. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I woke to unfamiliar sunlight, the disorienting realization that my life had completely transformed overnight. Emma was making coffee. Catherine called, she said, handing me a mug. She wants to talk to you this morning. Said it's important. I called Catherine. 3 of Harrison's major investors pulled funding overnight, she said without preamble. Issued statements citing concerns about financial irregularities and declining confidence in leadership. Joel Preston released a public statement distancing himself from Harrison's conduct, both personal and professional. He's trying to save the business by throwing Harrison completely under the bus. That was fast, I said. Self-preservation usually is. 2 property development deals Harrison was negotiating fell through. The clients don't want association with someone under federal investigation. And Leah was terminated from her position, effective immediately. That last piece hit differently. Leah had made choices that destroyed her career, but there was something sobering about how quickly consequences manifested once personal misconduct became public. Her company released a statement about ethics violations and misuse of corporate resources, Catherine continued. Very brief, very corporate, but clear enough. Her name is now permanently linked to both infidelity and professional misconduct. What about Harrison? Has he tried to contact you? His attorney called 4 times last night, twice already this morning. They want to settle immediately, offering increasingly desperate terms. Each offer worse for him than the last, because they understand his position is deteriorating rapidly. What do you recommend? Reject everything until we complete a comprehensive asset valuation. We need to know exactly what exists and what you are entitled to before we negotiate anything. The longer we wait, the weaker his position becomes. His business is collapsing. His reputation is destroyed. Federal investigators are beginning their inquiry. He has no leverage. Every incentive to settle quickly before things get worse. How much worse can they get? That depends on what federal investigators find. If the property valuation fraud is as extensive as Joel's documentation suggests, Harrison could face significant fines and potentially prison time. The tax evasion alone is serious. Combined with the fraud, he's looking at consequences that extend well beyond divorce and business failure. We talked for another 20 minutes. Catherine had already filed formal responses to Harrison's divorce papers, asserting claims to all marital assets, demanding full financial disclosure. She contacted forensic accountants to begin valuing everything. Weeks, possibly months, but Catherine was confident we'd recover everything he tried to hide, plus compensation. When I hung up, Emma was reading on her laptop, an expression of shock and amusement. News websites are covering this, she said. Not just gossip sites. Actual news outlets are writing about the viral video, calling it a case study in strategic response to betrayal. The article analyzed the dinner from multiple angles. My phone, which I turned back on, was filled with missed calls and messages, most from unknown numbers, a few from acquaintances. 3 were from Harrison. The first was angry, demanding to know how I could destroy him. The second, pleading, asking me to call him so we could discuss like reasonable adults. The third, threatening, suggesting I'd regret making his personal life public, that his attorneys would ensure I paid for the damage. I showed them to Emma. Don't respond, she said firmly. Catherine was right. Let him spiral. I deleted them. Whatever Harrison was experiencing now was consequence, not injustice. He had orchestrated a public humiliation designed to destroy me. His plan backfiring so completely was a result of his choices, his arrogance, his absolute confidence that I would never discover what he was doing or be capable of responding. The rest of Monday passed in a blur. By evening, the video had been viewed tens of millions of times. My face was recognizable. I sat on Emma's couch that night, a glass of wine untouched. Despite everything, the viral attention, the legal battles, the complete destruction of my old life, I felt something I hadn't in 18 months. Relief. That complicated relief settled over me that Monday evening. Relief, but also the recognition that while one chapter had ended, the aftermath required navigating entirely new territory. The divorce proceedings began formally the next week. Catherine filed comprehensive responses, asserting claims to every marital asset, demanding full financial disclosure. The process was methodical, exhausting. Depositions, document production, endless meetings. Harrison's attorney tried multiple approaches to expedite settlement, each offer more desperate. Catherine rejected every proposal, insisting we wouldn't negotiate until we had a complete understanding of every asset Harrison owned or controlled. The proceedings took 3 months. Judge Margaret Chin, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for handling complex marital disputes, presided. Harrison's attorney argued the viral video prejudiced proceedings. Judge Chin shut it down with a sentence Catherine later wished she could frame. Your client damaged his own reputation through systematic fraud and public cruelty. Mrs. Whitmore simply documented the truth. The settlement was everything Catherine had promised and more. The house remained mine, as his attempt to transfer the title was void. Investment accounts were divided exactly in half. Retirement funds split properly. Every cent Harrison had transferred to his personal accounts came back, with interest. His vintage watch collection, sold at auction, the proceeds contributing to my settlement. Catherine even recovered compensation for money he'd spent on Leia, hotels, dinners, jewelry, all classified as dissipation of marital assets. He paid twice for the affair that destroyed our marriage. The final settlement was substantial, enough to pay off the mortgage, with significant savings left over. But I didn't keep the house. Too many memories. Instead, I sold it and moved into a penthouse in the Arts District downtown. A space that felt like liberation made physical. 8 months after that anniversary dinner, I stood in my new apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Meridian Hall was visible in the distance, a landmark in my personal geography. The place where I had reclaimed my life, demonstrating that quiet patience could be more devastating than dramatic confrontation. I decorated it for me. Art I genuinely liked. Furniture that was comfortable, not just impressive. My career transformed too. My marketing firm promoted me to creative director 3 months after the video went viral. My boss explained that someone capable of orchestrating such comprehensive strategic communication clearly possessed valuable professional skills. The promotion came with a 40% salary increase and creative authority over major campaigns. For the first time in years, I was earning money that was unambiguously mine, unconnected to Harrison's aspirations, his expenditures, or his constant criticism that I wasn't ambitious enough, or successful enough, or simply enough. I adopted a cat named Justice. Emma suggested it, and the irony appealed to me. An imperious orange creature, entirely uninterested in performing emotional labor. He spent his days curled in sun patches, occasionally acknowledging my existence when food or attention suited him. Catherine became more than my attorney, she became a friend. She introduced me to a support group, women with similar stories. We shared experiences, strategies, building a community based on survival and growth, not victimhood. The group taught me my story wasn't unique, just unusually public. Countless women had experienced versions of what I had. The difference was most handled their divorces privately. 9 months after the anniversary dinner, Catherine called with news that extended Harrison's consequences far beyond divorce. Joel Preston had provided federal investigators with additional evidence. Financial crimes reaching back years. Harrison had been systematically falsifying property valuations, inflating appraisals to secure larger loans, then pocketing the difference. Federal investigators launched a comprehensive examination. What they uncovered resulted in criminal charges, 14 counts of wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy. The scope of his illegal activity was staggering. I was questioned, cleared quickly once they understood I had been as deceived about his business practices as I had about his personal conduct. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended several days, watching prosecutors build an overwhelming case. Harrison's business partner testified. Forensic accountants explained the fraud. Loan officers described how they relied on inflated valuations. Harrison was convicted on 11 of the 14 counts. At sentencing, Judge William Torres imposed 6 years in federal prison, followed by supervised release and restitution that would likely occupy the remainder of his professional life. I attended the sentencing. Catherine believed closure required witnessing consequences in their entirety. Harrison stood behind the defense table, wearing a suit that no longer fit. His face showed 18 months of accumulated stress. When Judge Torres asked if he wanted to make a statement, Harrison looked directly at me. I destroyed everything good in my life because I confused success with happiness and ambition with fulfillment, he said, his voice carrying less confidence than I had ever heard. My wife deserved better. She was better. And I was too arrogant to recognize that until it was too late. The words might have meant something years earlier. Now they were just insufficient acknowledgement, delivered far too late. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, not even the closure people talk about. Just a profound sense of release from a narrative I was finally finished living. That evening, I stood in my apartment, Justice curled on the sofa, harbor lights reflecting on the dark water. I finally understood something fundamental. Revenge had never been about destroying Harrison. It was about refusing to be destroyed by him. About documentation, not confrontation. Strategy, not emotion. Patience, not impulse. Harrison had wanted to upgrade. What he actually did was trade partnership for performance. Someone who knew him completely, for someone who knew only the version he performed for public consumption. The real upgrade had been mine. From a wife defined by marriage to a woman defined by choices. From someone who absorbed criticism about inadequacy to someone who recognized that inadequacy belonged to the person delivering judgment, not receiving it. The anniversary dinner video still circulates, resurfacing whenever someone compiles examples of public accountability. I no longer feel exposed by it. Instead, it's a permanent reminder that quiet people are not weak people. They are simply waiting for the right moment to demonstrate exactly how dangerous underestimation can be. If this story of calculated justice and strategic revenge captivated you from beginning to end, please hit that like button right now. For me, my favorite moment was when I calmly thanked Harrison for the divorce papers before revealing everything. What was your most satisfying moment in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't miss more powerful stories of resilience, justice, and triumph over betrayal. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're always notified the instant we upload new content.